pleasant good evening to the QRC community. My name is Alicia Casimir, and it is indeed my pleasure this evening, on behalf of the PTA executive, to host this PTA interview session with our principal, Mr. David Simon, where we will make every effort to give answers to the many questions I am sure everyone has concerning the COVID-19 measures implemented by both the Ministry of Education and the Ministry of Health for the reopening of schools in September 1st. To ensure that we make efficient use of the time this evening, I will quickly run through how this evening's session will proceed. Many parents have pre-submitted questions through the PTA form link earlier prior to today's session. This will be addressed by Mr. Simon first. Then, if time permits, parents will be able to post other questions to be addressed. I will indicate when. Once all questions have been answered, we will bring the session to a close. The PTA hopes that this online session will bring a greater understanding as to how the college will function in a safe and efficient manner in the months to come. We will now begin this evening's session. So welcome, Mr. Simon.
Pleasant good afternoon to you and all of the members of the QRC community viewing.
I must say thank you very much for taking the time out to answer a lot of the questions that the parents would have had concerns for. So we will jump right into it. Can you provide us with details with regarding to the physical infrastructural work that has been put in place so far by the school and still is being put in place with regards to the Ministry of Education, the Ministry of Health, COVID-19 requirements?
Okay, well, what we have been doing is installing a number of wash stations. So if we take you through an entrance into the school as you enter the school, that area just in front of the gymnasium, we have put in 4 wash stations there, and there is a standing sink. So there are 5 available spaces so that individuals could have their hands washed. We put in 7 sinks, wash stations again in the West Block. There are 4 down by the Science Block, and there are 4 down by the prefab area. So we've done a number of wash stations where students will be able to wash their hands as they enter the compound and as they move through the compound. The idea is, and what we have been doing as an administration, is ensuring that we work with that now. So we're putting in place not only for the exams but for September. I think that has gone quite well in terms of the wash sinks. We have also put up in those wash areas, that is going to be completed tomorrow actually. We are going to be putting up some soap dispensers, and we have started putting up as well throughout the school some of our hand sanitizing dispensing units. So those are going to go throughout the compound, upstairs in the West Block, downstairs in the West Block, Science Block, in the North Block, as well as your entrance to the main block area. So we have that pretty well covered. The idea is wherever the young men are in the school, there ought to be easy access to be able to direct them to where they can have their hands properly cleansed. There are also signs that have gone up. The safety first, wear your mask, safe social distancing. We are still to complete all of those signs, but we will have that in place for September. But right now, for the purpose of the exams, we have put up signs in the areas that are in use, okay, and we will be continuing that particular process as we go along. I want to take the opportunity though to thank some of, not the old boys organization, but some of our past students, some of our old boys who have financed this particular project in terms of the wash sinks. And I do wish to say thank you to Mr. Kenrick Harrinot and his group of past students who he went to school with. I think they have been a foundation to the school in terms of helping us establish these sanitization stations.
Wonderful, and we're most grateful for that. So it is safe to say that we have done quite a number of things, and there are still some things to be completed before the 1st of September.
The things that have to be completed in terms of infrastructure is not really that many projects, right? The infrastructure is basically already in place. We just have one thing to sort out. As I said, we have purchased as many through the government vote, as many as about 30 of the either soap dispensers or hand sanitizing dispensers. This the same, it just depends on what you put in them. But that is going to be completed maybe by tomorrow, putting those up throughout the school because it started today and quite a few have gone up.
Okay, great, wonderful. Can you also give us an update as to the work that is being done by Unicot with the College Hall in respect to the College Hall?
Okay, so the whole, I was chatting to a member of Unicot even today. We went into the hall just to clarify a few things, and I have been reliably informed by somewhere in the middle of August, they should be totally completed and out of here. So
Great.
that is what they are hoping. They are a little behind now, but I think she feels that by middle of August, everything should be completed.
And ready for school. Great. I know this is a
I
question.
don't know about ready for school because what we have to do is first assess when they leave, what is the situation, and we are going to have to see how do we actually outfit that area with furniture and that sort of thing to have it ready
Okay,
for school.
got you. I
Right?
understand.
We have put in a request for some padded chairs. We're putting a request for desks as well from the Ministry of Education. If we do get those, then the spaces can be made into 2 classrooms as it has always been. But failure to secure that from the Ministry of Education is going to mean that we are going to have to wait a bit before we can actually make those spaces classrooms because we may not have the necessary furniture.
Okay, well, we are hopeful. This is a question that I know are on the minds and forefront of all the parents in terms of when would the book lists be ready to be circulated?
The book list will be circulated maybe as early as tomorrow, but no later than Monday, the 20th.
Wow,
The book
that's
list
great.
we've been working on it. We had
Okay,
one of
good.
the chief individuals who was actually working on it. There was some issues that she's been dealing with, so we had to have our vice principal, Mr. Mohammed, step in and do some work. But the book list is going to probably be ready. Mr. Mohammed is actually here, so it might be even before whisper to me when, but it may even be ready by tomorrow, but certainly no later than Monday.
By Monday. Okay, great. I know that parents were concerned in terms of financial planning when.
Well, let me
So
just
is
say this.
also.
I don't know why parents would be concerned. I wanna say this. Parents must seriously look at planning ahead in terms of what has to happen. You know that no matter what, if your child is in around fourth form or so, you need to put aside at least $2,000 to $3,000 just for books,
Wow,
right?
yes,
Because
correct.
they would be going into their CSEC program, and they are lower forms. It would be between 1,500 and 200 and 2,000. So you need to start planning and putting those things in place. The books that you will need, I think that the PTA may even well still be engaging in their second-hand book sale, which is
Correct.
a whopping success. So parents might be able to reduce some of their costs. But in terms of planning ahead, you have a fair idea of no matter what the books are going to be, what the
There is
cost is.
going
If
to
you
be
have a
a.
fourth form child, just for books and all the paraphernalia, you need no less than 3,000.
Well, I'm happy that you were able to explain that to parents, and now they are very much aware. That leads me to our next question, which would be when would you recommend the PTA book sale, the second-hand book sale?
Well, the PTA, I think, will have to make a decision as to when they want to do it. We have to keep in mind that our first formers are not going to come in until probably in October, right?
Right.
So that is where you would want to look at. The rest of the school, it has been suggested that we are going to begin September, God willing, with everything remaining as it is presently. That is going to happen in September. So parents will need the books for September. So the PTA would need to look and see when they should be able to do that. Let me just say that exams finish on the 3rd of August. So the gymnasium is going to be free basically from the
Okay.
3rd of August. So once the PTA has decided and notified their parents and when books can be brought in, it can be done from as early as the week after exams have been completed. So it could be, you all could start looking at.
Well, what we were looking at is the fact that the third term would have been starting in the 1st of September. And if the young men are using their books, let's say at Form
The third
2,
term, well, we're getting into another aspect there, because in QRC, that third term will continue, yes, in September, right? But the book lists that you are going to be getting will be for when they go in to what would be their new year level, right? So the purchase of those books still have to be done, so they could be done as early as in August, because the third term work that will be covered will be using some of the text that they have, but I mean, it is just, we're talking about maybe a month, yeah, a month and a half.
Okay.
Of
we were concerned that the boys going back to school would have had to use their present books before moving up. And it would have created a space where we couldn't have held the book sale in August, knowing that the boys needed their books for September and a little bit of October. So that is why we asked the question, should the book sale now be placed maybe in the middle of October or maybe the first week in October?
That might be a good idea. That might be a good idea, as we say, because some of the boys may be using some of the books, right? So that might be a good idea.
Well, to the parents who are listening, the answer to that question will be put out by the PTA after they would have had their meeting. We will decide whether it's, easier to do it in August or maybe the first week in October. We'll keep you informed. Moving on to, would you be accepting transfers for the Form 2 class?
Well, it's not just Form 2. I mean, right now, all transfers are. I mean, it is unrealistic to be even thinking about transfers at this point in time. We have no idea what is going to happen in September. I mean, realistically, if things remain as we are right now, say for example, right now, if things remain like that in September, we have no choice but to split our classes. All right, because the average class, let me just give you an idea of the class sizes. In Form 1, we talk about 40 individuals, no less than 40. We have like 40, 41, 41 in our present Form 1. We split that up a bit in third form, and where we go to about 31 per class, and that is a tight squeeze in the West Block. They remain like that right through to sixth form when so those numbers remain straight through to fifth form, and then there are slight variations when they begin in sixth form when we choose the sixth form. So right now, all our classroom space is totally usurped in terms of handling the personnel in the space. Now, let me just add to that. Usually how we facilitated transfers would be some guys migrate, other guys in particular instances may ask for transfers to other schools, and that would not be many, right? And they are successfully granted a transfer. So we might find in a classroom we could find space for 2 or 3 individuals. With the COVID situation, nobody is asking to go anywhere. So
what would you
right now,
recommend
the classes,
to the parent who's asking that question, or to someone who's asking that question? What would you recommend?
I can't recommend anything. There's
So we
nothing
hold on
that
till
can be
further
done.
notice.
QRC has placed all transfers on hold, so I can't recommend that they do anything. They simply have to wait and see what will happen in September, more towards the end of September as well. But I strongly suspect that nobody is going to be leaving QRC to go anywhere, so that the issue of us having no space is going to continue. So I don't want to come out and say that categorically at this stage, but right now it's not looking good for transfer.
Highly unlikely, yes. If a parent wishes for their son to repeat the form, what would be the procedure?
There will be no procedure, there will be no repeats.
There will be no repeats.
There will be no repeats. As I just explained, we don't have space. We don't have space, one. And then secondly, as an educator, I don't recommend a repeat lower down in the system. Let me just explain something to parents. You are only allowed one repeat throughout the entire secondary school system. So if you ask for a child, let's say, to repeat second form, and that child repeats second form, you can no longer use the option of having that child repeat at the examination level. Right? So I always advise parents, if indeed you believe that you need to have your son or your daughter in another school, it's just general advice, choose to have them repeat during the exam. Give them 2 shots of the exam. Well, not even fourth form, fifth form. Right? I still believe that if you are in fourth form and at the end of your fourth form year, like presently, you can salvage your CSEC grades with hard work, proper organization, and that sort of thing. Still, right? So I really do believe, as an educator, I always give people advice that if you're contemplating repeat, give them 2 shots at the exam. So repeat at your examination.
At fifth form. Yeah. Good advice. Thank you. According to the Ministry of Education guidelines, students will now be required to wear masks. Can you advise as to where they will be required to wear the mask and during what activities the mask should be worn?
Well, the guidelines are clear. They advise to come onto the compound with their masks on, right? So in QRC, here's how it's going to operate. They are going to have to come onto the compound with their QRC masks, right? So that's the first thing.
That is mandatory.
That is mandatory, right? We are going to be providing masks, and they are going to have to come with their QRC masks.
Let me interject there. Is there a cost to this mask?
Yeah, the masks
what would the cost
will be purchased at the school, and the cost is $25 and $30.
Okay.
Right. I think there should be some samples of the mask that we pass. There is a solid blue one, of course, with our logo on it, and then there is the light blue and dark blue one. The solid blue one is $25, and the other one with the 2 shades, that would be $30.
Okay.
That has to be purchased, and they will come on to the compound. Now, nobody will be allowed to come on to the compound without a mask. So you are going to have to wear the mask. You come onto the compound, you sanitize, and then you go to your general space. Now, what I have noticed, even for exams, the boys are not very good at social distancing. So you have to be constantly talking to them.
They are children.
So, right. So even if they, or well, I should say, when they come in, they are in close proximity to one another. We recognize that that is going to take place to some extent, which is why we insist on them sanitizing and then wearing the masks, so that if they are outside in close proximity, which is what I have been seeing even with our bigger boys, because you're talking about our 5th and 6th formers, they still want to be less than the 6 feet apart, then you must have the mask on, because it speaks to, and the Ministry of Health has been doing a wonderful job in explaining why the mask should be worn. If you have your mask on and I have my mask on, then it's very difficult for us to pass anything to each other.
Yes.
Right? So and you see, we have to be realistic. It's all well and good to sit in a room doing your interviews and talk about 6 feet distancing. If you bring out individuals who haven't seen one another for such a long time,
correct,
they are going to want to
gravitate
to each other. They are at the age we man is a very tactile being, and West Indian societies are very tactile societies. So they are going to have to wear their masks when they are in that close,
in the general areas,
right, with contact with one another. And the deans, the safety officer, the teachers are going to be insisting that they wear their masks. We too, as adults, if we are going into that bubble with them to talk to them, we have to have our masks on. Now, if a child is social distancing 6 feet, you can take your mask off. Your mask is not going to be required when you go into the classroom.
So we will not be wearing masks in the classroom.
Because the classroom would be socially spaced according to the dictates of the Ministry of Health. Right? So it is not going to, and they have stated that the students do not have to wear the masks in the classroom. But I have noticed that movements throughout the regular day outside may require them to have the masks on if they are not indeed social distance.
Great. Well, I know for myself, in terms of my son, he's anxiously waiting to meet with his other friends, and wearing a mask, both him and the friend, will prevent anything from, as you rightly said, cross-contaminating, because they're really anxious. They've been home, they've been locked up.
Yeah.
They're anxious to get into friend mode, the way they think things were before. I just think it's just educating them on the new norm.
Well, the interesting thing is that task falls greatly on parents. That education process, quite apart from what is taking place on using the media, the parents all know while they are home are the ones who need to get them to understand. So, for example, the significance of just purchasing the mask. And I want people to understand this is a school. Uniformity is very important, and safety. Right? Remember, with the mask on, we have noticed that a mask on, it is difficult for us even to identify boys in the school. When they come with the mask into the office, we are struggling sometimes to make out
facial
exactly
recognition.
who it is. Now, at least this is one safety security in that it's a QRC mask. You have to purchase the QRC mask from within the community. So boys walking in, it's not foolproof, but it also helps.
It guarantees you that this is a QRC
well,
student.
I wouldn't say guarantee.
Well, as safe as much as we can.
Yes, but at least we know that this is something we are selling within our QRC community, and our boys have to purchase these masks.
Right. Well, I don't think that you are different or apart. I think all of the secondary schools are now doing that.
Yeah, my daughter attends Bishop, and Bishop Anstey has the same thing. We have to purchase a mask for her with the Bishop.
So I want parents to know that this is not something that QRC alone is initiating. It's being done by all of the secondary schools, or all schools, as a matter of fact.
For safety, there are many reasons why you would want to do that. It keeps in terms of your uniform. And one of the things that I have said when I've spoken as well is that this is history, So boys should want to have their masks and keep their masks, for years to come. Actually, one of the things we will be doing at the end of this year as a school is we are going to be doing a time capsule for the 150th year, something that we are already in discussions over. And that is one of the things we're going to put in the capsule, the 2 masks.
This is a unprecedented time, and I think this is something that we should remember.
Preserve historically. Yeah.
Agreed. Just a quick question on the masks. Still, you will let us know as to when the parents can come in.
Some of the masks are available. We started off with just 50 for some of the boys who were in need, and today was the first day, and we probably sold over, I would say maybe about 10 to 15 masks alone today. So
how are parents to access it? Can we just walk onto the
compound? No, you can't just walk onto the compound. But right now, we will have all the masks available for the start of school, definitely. We are going to be finalizing the order with the person. So we believe that by the start of August, we'll have masks on sale from the office if you wish to come and purchase it even
Okay, great.
before. So it would be on sale.
Okay. The next question would be, based on the Ministry of Education guidelines, I know you touched on it earlier in terms of each class must be separated into two groups, well, at least into half the class size to accommodate the social distancing. QRC runs on a 6-day timetable. Can we now expect a 12-day timetable? Can you clarify for us?
Okay, so we need to recognize that the proposed, the guidelines for the reopening of school are just that, they're guidelines. Those things could change,
This is a fluid
based
situation.
on what is taking place. For example, if things go really well with us, and let's say the ministry decides to reduce the 6 feet distance to 3 feet or so because what is taking place, then we will be pretty close to normal. Right? If, however, this 6 feet is maintained, what it means is that any classroom in QRC, the maximum you will be able to house is 15 students.
Wow.
As I told you, the average class, maybe in Form 1 you might be able to get 20 because that classroom is a little bigger than what applies in the West Block and the prefab areas. But it still is only going to be about half of the class that you are going to be able to facilitate. The Ministry of Education is suggesting a blended system where, yes, you are going to take 1 day is going to in effect take 2 days. So yes, that will be a suggestion. Now there are a number of ramifications here. We have been talking about exactly how we are going to do that. But the very first thing I want people to understand is the fluidity of the situation. One, departments are going to have to determine how best they are going to be able to deliver the curriculum and what is going to best suit them.
Okay.
So there are numerous discussions which still must take place. There are systems that we are looking at. What happens? How do we in fact run a particular class? It means you have to teach the same thing twice. So you teach something to a half of the class today. Tomorrow it will be the same day one with another half.
Right.
We have entered into discussions in our management team as to, can we utilize a system where when the teacher goes into the classroom, a computer is running and half the class could follow
online,
at home, so that you look at it that way, that maybe you can get a class done per day, right? So you do day one will be day one because half would be here and half would be following at home.
Correct.
Right? And then day two we switch the group, switch it so that it is the next group who will be there and the other group follows on home. And that way you might be able to get in your day one, day two, because you're now blending the methodology in terms of how the subject matter is going to be delivered. But the problem with that is the problem that we presently face. I mean, even when during the lockdown, how do we have, or how do we ensure that those who are home have access to the internet and to be able to learn? So failing that, then the next option is that you really have to take 2 days to cover 1 week. The recognition here though is that when the term is over, you would only be halfway through you are supposed to, because the term is going to be split basically in half. So therefore, the next option is, does a teacher teach part of it in the classroom and then have prepared work, taped sessions, prepared lesson sessions that are available online, so that students will be able to go online and do that work. So there are a number of different options that we may have to think of, and we need to recognize that the difficulty with this particular situation is that right now teachers are on holidays. So that
Yes.
that
Yes, it is.
discussion cannot really take place. It's taking place now voluntarily, involving the management group, etc. But you have to recognize that right now teachers are on holidays, so I can't impinge on
Right,
teachers'
yes.
holidays right
This is
now.
their
No teacher
rightful,
is mandated to take on anything I say
rightfully
at this
this is
point
their
in time because
vacation.
right now this is their vacation. So
Right.
that adds another dimension, a dimension that is not really covered when you think of the guidelines, right? Because everybody thinks that when we come in September, everything is going to be in place. No, there's going to be a lot still that has to be hammered out. What so that is still up in the air in terms of exactly how we do it, right? So there's still many questions that need to be answered, and the Ministry of Education itself still has to give us clear guidelines as to what they expect of us.
Okay. And for parents who are listening, I want to urge them to have patience come September, mainly because it's a unprecedented time. This is not something that we have ever gone through before, and it is taking a lot of thought put into it, a lot of work being put into it to really develop a plan for these boys. And I know that the teachers, I know that the management of QRC, even the Ministry of Education has the students at heart. It's just a matter that because this situation is a fluid situation where things can change drastically by a plane load of people, we will
By
have to
one
extend,
person,
well,
by
as you
one
rightly
person.
said, one person. We will have to exercise some patience, and I urge parents as well that we have always been from the very beginning the first educators of our children. And having a child at home, we don't necessarily have to wait on the school. We can have the boys pre-read some of the
Yeah,
chapters. We
yeah.
can have them pre-do some of the work. So we do appreciate the work that is being done by the teachers. I know that the heads of department are out.
Yeah, we have been working the management team as the deans, the HOs, and we will continue working throughout
And
because
we, the parents, are very appreciative of that. I know that in order for school to be not necessarily perfect but workable, it requires certain persons to work during their vacation.
yeah.
So we thank you
Well, let me
immensely for
just add
that.
one thing as you're saying there. Even when we come out to school, we're gonna spend some time focusing on the mental
That is also very
wellness
important.
of the young men. So we are
Yes.
not just coming out and first day we will be no that as I said when I spoke to the whole school in our assembly, that is very important. Your academic progression is very important. But we need to understand that they need to be at a certain level in terms of their wellness, their mental wellness, even their physical wellness, right? They are going to be dealing with a number of apprehensions and a number of issues when we come back up. We first have to deal with this as a school. As a matter of fact, when we come out, usually teachers come out for 2 days. When we come out, that's the first thing that the administration is planning, a wellness session for our
Okay.
teachers,
First of all,
right?
yes.
So that there is going to be a progression which we are going to share with the PTA, which I've been doing from the time we've been on lockdown, using the PTA to get across to the parents exactly how we plan to move. But that we first need to establish that foundation.
Okay. Now, the Ministry of Education has indicated that they will provide devices or make accessible devices to both the students and the staff. Can you give us some?
Well, you know I can't comment on what the
Okay.
ministry did. I can speak to what happens in QRC. So for example, like our sinks and that sort of thing, I didn't wait on the ministry, right?
Okay.
What the ministry promises, I cannot. I'm an employee of the ministry. So I sit and I wait for whatever they
Directions and
promise. I
directives.
can make no comments on promises of the ministry.
Okay. Fair enough. What is the QRC COVID-19 policy should a teacher or student test positive
Well,
for the
the
COVID?
QRC COVID-19 policy, QRC doesn't have a COVID-19 policy, that's a national policy, which is clearly outlined in the document.
So we follow the MOH on that.
Yeah, what they have said, I could quickly run through it, just in case you think that I'm answering like that because I don't know the answer, but it is what
No,
we
well,
do.
the answers here are to provide for the parents, for
Yeah.
those who
So let me
are
tell
not
you,
aware.
let me tell you what is clearly outlined in the document, and I hope that the PTA is going to stress. I know that you all have put this document out. That parents should read this document, not peruse it. They should read the document
And understand
carefully
fully.
from the start of the document to the end of the document. Because I don't think that people recognize that we're really dealing, because we've been lucky thus far, that this is a life and death situation that we're really dealing with. This COVID-19 situation.
Correct.
Right? So what they have suggested, if someone tests positive for the COVID here, and we are aware of that, the very first thing I have to do is to call my school supervisor. And then I must inform the Ministry of Health, inclusive of the CMO, the Chief Medical Officer. And then the next step that I have to do is to fill out my early dismissal form and dismiss school for the day. Then the school is going to be shut down. And then after that, it is totally in the hands of the Ministry of Health in terms of when is the area going to be sanitized, how it's going to be sanitized, when it's going to be reopened. Any individual who has been diagnosed with COVID-19 must present, so let's say school reopens, someone who is returning must present a certificate of wellness from a medical practitioner before they are allowed back onto the premises. So that is but that's not QRC's policy, that is our national
policy. Okay, wonderful. Now, I know that the connectivity throughout the college has not been working for some time. Would we see an improvement in that come September?
Well, to be honest, the issue there is an issue of cost, money, right? So there are a host of reasons. But what I can tell you is that presently our system is, we get our system from Flow.
Okay.
All right. There are a number of issues with that. Our IT tech and a number of other individuals have been working on an alternative system. Just today, I had a discussion with our IT tech who has completed doing the assessment for two other options. The cheapest of those two, or the cheaper of the two options that he has suggested, is going to cost us nothing less than $90,000, right? To put in place.
Infrastructure-wise.
Yes, infrastructure-wise. The beauty about that, what we are suggesting though, is that it's going to be a one operational cost that you are going to have to pay. The equipment that you get is yours as well once you purchase it. So the operations it's not going to be as high as what we pay through on a monthly basis.
Gotcha.
So there are advantages, but we have looked at an alternative to Flow, but just the startup of that we're talking about, and if you say 90, that doesn't include miscellaneous. You're talking about probably over 100 and something thousand to put in what from the technical background that he has is going to be a system that allows access throughout the school. But the challenges that we have are financial at this point in time, and it has been made worse by COVID, because whereas we might have been able to set aside some of our things from the vote, some of the finances from the vote to do something like that, we definitely had to spend a lot. So like, for example, the 40 sanitizers that we put out throughout the school would have come from the government vote, and a lot of the things in terms of preparing the infrastructure, right, to be safe would come from it.
Okay, thank you. will there be any pre-season training for any of the sporting activities at the college during this August vacation?
Well, preseason training in football has started actually. So
Okay.
yes, the Ministry of Education has given us the all clear to have training. I spoke to the basketball community. The cricket team had a training session already. So coaches have reached out. One of our athletics individuals, the coach who works with some of our students, has reached out to me. What I have asked individuals to is that everybody who is interested in training, that you must give me a full proposal of how the trainings are going to be conducted, what safety measures you are going to be putting in place in addition to following, of course, the school's protocol, right, and regard entry, the use of masks, etc. But the coaches, what systems you are going to be putting in place as well. For example, the start time of the activities, how many adults are going to be there. All of these things now are far more crucial. But training per se is going to be facilitated. The ministry has given an okay. What we do not have as yet are full-scale competitions. The CMO did indicate that competitions among children will not begin before September. But in any case, I think that that is geared so that when school begins, the competitions will take
Then
place.
commence.
So we are expecting that the football season, which rolls off, football is one of the first that begins in September, is going to begin in September if everything remains as is.
Right, and this will continue at the starting of the school term in terms of, I know you said football and cricket, but every other sport that is.
Every sport that wishes to train, you will be facilitated to train. The basketballers, I spoke to the teacher involved. All we need, in fact, they have been doing some training off site. They had asked before permission was granted by the Ministry of Education. So of course I declined. I told them that that will not be possible on the school grounds. But the coach, along with some of the parents, decided that they will let their sons work, and that's fine if it happens outside of QRC, nothing
Wonderful.
involved in that. But they are free to come back into QRC once we have a schedule. What we of course have to do is to make sure that we have a schedule so that everybody has their time, so we don't have too many individuals on the compound at one time. But it's a pretty large compound, it can facilitate a number of
Sporting
individuals.
activities.
Yes, once
Right.
the adults.
If a shift system is to be implemented with the boys, how will students relying on transportation be accommodated?
Transportation is not something that the school sees about.
Right.
Individuals, parents are responsible for organizing their own transport. Um, the maxi taxis, that is not organized by the school, that is organized by the Ministry of Education. What we do is provide some degree of order, etc., by having a listing of the boys who utilize the transportation provided by, paid for by the ministry. So we have the young men, their names, so we know who will be traveling and that sort of thing. But on the maxis, right now, the national policy is that they're running at 100%. What we are going to insist is that the young men wear their masks and that sort of thing when they but transportation is not something that the school sees about. The
This is
parent
something
has
the
the
parent.
responsibility of seeing
Right.
that, so we
This
will
is-
not be dealing with that.
Okay, great. Thank you for answering all of our predisposed questions. We will now take a couple online questions. So we have, let me just, one parent is asking, is it possible for the temperatures of the boys to be taken upon entry into the school compound?
That's a very, very, very good question, but it is a very, very, very complicated issue.
Okay.
there are legal implications and legal ramifications where those things are concerned. Now, and principals have raised with the ministry a number of questions, a number of concerns we have. For example, who takes the temperature?
Okay.
Right? Yes, you're taking the temperature. You hold a handheld device in your hand, your security guard, you hold a handheld device in your hand, and you read that temperature. What exactly does that temperature see? If the temperature goes beyond, what does that say to me as a principal taking somebody's temperature? The issue was raised by principals. Will there be trained individuals provided for schools so that we can facilitate the taking of the temperature of boys?
Okay.
Right. Let me run through. See, because it is all well and good, as I say sometimes, to raise these issues without looking at how practical they are. Rain is falling. So rain is pouring on a particular day in Queen's Royal College. How are those temperatures to be taken? Where are they to be taken? Boys might be running from a vehicle and getting wet, right? At that point in time. Me as a principal and a layman, a child coming in soaked, what is his temperature supposed to be? There are many issues where those temperature, the taking of the temperature is concerned. Now, we are in possession, again, thanks to a past student by the name of Don Farrell, who lives abroad. We are in possession of two very nice temperature thermometers, two very nice thermometers. They work perfectly. We've outfitted them with batteries and that sort of thing. But how it's going to be rolled out, principals have asked numerous questions, and those questions have not been answered as yet. But let me tell you what my particular take was. I certainly did not have it in my assessment that I am going to be taking the temperature of the young men coming into Queen's Royal College. I had more that our temperature would be used for visitors coming onto the compound. I am still thinking that teachers are almost, well, in many instances we are parents. So observation of our students, what is happening with a child, that is what is going to cause us then to maybe pull a child, then take the temperature to see if this child has an elevated temperature, and then we move from there. Now, one of the things that I had sort of suggested is that a body like the PTA could help in that you may have nurses, we may have several nurses who are parents, some may have been retired, family retired, and certainly if I have someone who says that they can come 2 days in a week from 7 till 9 a.m., we could make arrangements for them to assist us, even train some of our teachers.
Take note of this,
right,
and take it back to the
train people as to how. But this is not, I go to places where individuals take their temperature and I just smile because I know this is a sham. This is the person taking the temperature is not trained so that if my temperature there is a fluctuation, that security guard taking the temperature does not have a clue what is really taking place. And I don't think as an educational institution we should be engaging in exercises of futility. And some part of that smacks of just saying that it
We're
has
just
to
doing
be
it
done.
for doing its sake.
Yes, but principals have raised a number of issues, including the legality of it. And one thing I wish to add there, remember, a child, if I'm going to T&Tech to pay a bill, and the guard in T&Tech turns me away, that's fine. I'm an adult. I can't turn away a child
who has been dropped off by a maxi.
Yes, that child is now my responsibility.
Duty of care
so that the child
transferred.
has to come on to the compound. The child may need to be quarantined and that sort of thing. But the thermometer is not something that allows me to turn the child away. Good? A child coming in, sometimes just by looking at this child's eyes, looking at the child, that you know that the child is unwell. So a couple screening questions would also serve, as well as this thermometer in your hand pretending to be a medical practitioner.
I have another question here from a parent who's asking, What is the procedure for a young man who suffers from asthma in terms of the mask?
That's simple. If there is a medical document saying that he can't use the mask, then he can't use the mask. And that has been pointed out on a national level. Again, this is not something that is unique to QRC. It has been clearly indicated that if an individual is suffering with asthma or some other respiratory illness and the mask cannot be used, what will be needed will be the certification that we will keep on file. But that individual is going to have to recognize that they're going to have to social distance, and there are some activities they may not be able to be right up in the middle of for their own and the safety of others.
In terms of the boys who are choosing subjects in the fourth form, how does QRC intend on going about it in September?
Well, I will direct all our third formers. Our third form dean, Miss Renee
Miss Thomas?
Thomas, Keynes Thomas. She
Yes.
has a very detailed document week by week as to how we are going to proceed.
I know it was shared
Right.
a
So
couple of weeks
that
ago.
that document is detailed. Is a document that she worked on in accordance with Mrs. Natasha Adams Romano, and that document is extremely detailed to the point of view of exactly what we are going to be doing week to week. From week 1 to week 10 is outlined when they come out. But for the third formers, when they come, they are going to be engaging in their going over the work, third terms work, and then they are going to do that. There is going to be an assessment that is done, and we will be following all of the normal procedures: teacher recommendation, interviews with the students, and subject choices will come in week 10. Right? Then that information is going to be forwarded to the parents, what subjects, and those are the ones who have to wait to purchase books.
Books, right.
Right? But as I was saying, you don't have to wait to financially plan. A parent outfitting a child to begin their CSEC program needs nothing less than $3,000 just to see about books and all of those things. Right? So there's a 10-week program clearly outlined. Miss has shared that. So every third form parent has access to that document, right? And that has been shared. So again, I will urge all of the present third formers, right, and their parents to read that document from start to finish.
Okay, so that is a go-to document to
Yes,
answer
it is
all
clearly,
subject
everything
choosing.
is clearly
Okay,
outlined from week 1 to week 10. We have a 10-week program for third form, right, into fourth form. And at the end of the 10th week, that will culminate with subjects being chosen and the beginning of the fourth form program.
Okay. So before we close off, do you have any closing remarks? Anything that you want to let the parents of QRC know?
Well, I want to say just a couple of things. I want to say, one, that parents need not breed apprehension into their kids by being overly anxious. I get the impression sometimes that when some of the parents engage you, that all they are concerned about is academic well-being of the child, and that bothers me really, because I always say that QRC is not an academic institution, right? QRC is an educational institution, and academics is one part of that, which is why I spoke to the mental wellness of these children, having them psychologically prepared, physically prepared, mentally prepared will allow them academic success. You could catch up academically You have to be alive first and foremost to be
Correct.
able to do
Thing
anything,
at all, yes.
right? So that's the first thing, making sure that we preserve life through our practices. Then the quality of life. So that I have a sort of ladder that I think we must follow. First thing is the preservation of life, and then the quality of life. And the quality of life is going to be maintained through spiritual, physical, psychological, and mental wellness and preparation. Because these are the things that would allow for academic success. All right? So I want to say to the parents that this is a process, and you must engender confidence, resilience in your child by being measured, being as calm as you possibly can, recognizing that these times are not normal times, but also recognizing that the flexibility of the child is much greater than our own at particular ages. Don't worry about them. They will bounce back and they will do very
resilient.
well.
Yes,
Right?
children are
We
resilient.
are supposed to put certain things in place that will allow them to be in a position to be academically successful. Recognizing that academic success is one part of the educational process that we try to build at Queen's Royal College. So when they come out, it is going to be very important that one, as I said, they understand what is required of them to be safe, and then they understand what is required of them to enjoy their educational experiences. No sense them coming here with a set of apprehension and all that fear, and not from them, but that we engender in them. I would like parents to think about that very, very carefully, because that is, to me, the most important thing.
Yes, correct.
Right? And that is what I would say to the parents, recognizing that we're going to be moving in some tough economic times. The school is going to need support, financial and otherwise. We can't escape that because of some of the things we now have to put in place that we never had to
deal with
concentrate
before.
on before. But that is what I would say to my parent body.
Okay, great. So at this time, we're going to close off the session. Thank you very much for making the time to sit with us, to answer, to quell some of the fears that the parents would have garnered over the time. I know at this juncture, it is imperative to say we are grateful for the teachers who are coming out at a time where this is rightfully their vocation. For yourself who's coming out, I know that the CSEC is taking place for the
CSEC and Cape, yeah.
right, and Cape, and the diligence that you have towards the boys and the school, we are most grateful. On behalf of the PTA, I do hope that a lot of the questions, a lot of the concerns that parents have been answered tonight. I don't think that there are any more answers that can come out of the question posed. There are some answers or some questions, as you say, that just simply have no answer currently at this time,
yeah.
because the situation that we're in is unprecedented. We are now adjusting to the new norm. We now have to exercise patience. We now have to take a step back, and we, the parents, have to educate our boys as to what the new norm is going to be at school. So we now have to tell our boys there is no shaking of hands and there is no sharing of water bottles, and we're not sharing and we're not giving a bite out of a sandwich to our friend no more. And not because we're not friends, it's just not safe health wise to do so. Thank you very much.
That's easier said than done.
It is. I know. I see the anxiousness in my son to return to school, to be with his friends, and I have to have that conversation with him now where you've got to tame this down. You've got to be able to speak to someone at a distance and not have the urge to give him a bounce or to high five and that sort of thing. So thank you, Sil, so
You're
much.
welcome.